sponsor.
When you are on your own, we are with you. Good evening and welcome. This is News First, your #1 news provider. The first death in the shores of Sri Lanka owing to COVID-19 was reported, sending shivers down the spines of many Sri Lankans. The question now arises, are we safe? We are facing trying times. The situation in the world is dire. India and many other nations in Europe and even superpowers like the USA, now the epicenter of COVID-19, are feeling the severity of the virus. The COVID-19 threat does not discriminate. It affects us all in the same way. You could be a billionaire, politician, a medic, a member of the armed forces, or even a journalist. We are all affected in the same way. We are working tirelessly day in and day out to bring you the latest accurate information on COVID-19 to keep you up to date on what's happening around you. We are operating with a limited staff by heeding to the instructions provided by the health authorities and the government. We would like you to follow suit. We urge you to heed the instructions of the health authorities, stay at home, stop the spread and stay alive. Let us all unite as one to come out on top and fight this menace. We will continue to ensure that the details we provide you is accurate, verified and unbiased. Let's take a quick look at tonight's stories we are following right here at News First today. A plan has been put in place to strengthen the already collapsed economy owing to COVID-19. Government accelerates program to distribute essential food items to those in need. How has the virus wreaked havoc in the village? Number of infected world over increases, a situation update. All this and more tonight on the news, and we will tell you what's happening around you as well. Joining us this evening on the news bulletin is Dr. Samantha Ananda, spokesperson of the Government Medical Officers Association. And thank you very much, Dr. Samantha, for joining us this evening on the show. First of all, we would like to thank you for being in the front line treating the infected, the COVID-19 patients, and we would like to also tell you that this is a time to be confident and not lose your guard and ensure that Sri Lanka also is on top from all this menace and the crisis that we're facing at present. Now, the first death was reported today. 60-year-old male from Maravilla, underlying kidney disease has been cited as the cause for the death, doctor, and the reason being is COVID-19. What's happening? A few days ago we thought we are on top and now back to the gutter.
Exactly. Now by today there are 113 patients has been diagnosed, and there is a one death has happened already. Unfortunately, this is what we wanted to prevent actually, but unfortunately we had to face to the reality. And this patient, if you talk about this patient, he's a 60 years old patient from Maravilla area, and he has been having his diabetes, and he was a patient with kidney transplanted patient, so he has been on his immunosuppressive medication as well, so his immune status also was affected at the time that he got the virus, and therefore with these complications he has gone into the critical phase, and therefore unfortunately he has passed away. But we should make sure that we know about the international figures. It is a fact that most of the deaths has occurred among the patients who were all, like, you know, the people who are above 60 years, and also the people with other comorbidities. But we should not forget the fact that there are young patients, there are patients who were not having any diseases also face the consequences. Therefore, we must pay our vigilance. We have to adhere to the advices that we have given.
Dr. Samantha, isn't this the time to worry? Because just 2 days ago we thought that Sri Lanka was on top. There was no issue with regard to the number of infected persons. The number was declining. but suddenly there is a rapid increase. We see now from 100 to 113 patients have been infected, with one death being reported. Isn't this time to worry?
It's like this now. We predicted certain figures. We based on the international the trend that this disease has spreaded in the other countries. We had predictions based on the statistics that were available from the other countries, and it showed that although the number of patients who were diagnosed is less, but actually there can be many other patients who were not diagnosed but are moving in the society. So therefore we wanted to make sure that this social distancing is carried out in an effective manner. Unfortunately, we saw in the previous few days that there were a lot of complications happening. The idea of the curfew is not being carried out properly by the general public. Certain people really must have not understood what is the importance of this curfew, and so on and so on. Therefore, now although we have 113 patients at the moment, we predict that there may be so many other people outside in the society just moving around, and that shows the fact that 3 patients who found, one is from Kandy and other one is from the Kalutara incident. And
the US health authorities has already said that the social distancing guidelines have to come into play up until June, and there needs to be a 21-day lockdown. In Sri Lanka, we are just following the partial lockdown 15 days ago. We are just entering the 16th day tomorrow. Does this mean that after 21 days, Sri Lanka is on the right track? We don't have to worry. Is that what you are inclining, Doctor?
No, actually speaking, we should worry. We should worry. Why? Because our health facilities are limited. The number of ICU beds, although they say 5% of the patients are going into the critical phase, the ICU facilities available in Sri Lanka is limited. Our medical, the capacity of the hospitals are limited. So therefore, we should not give any room to spread this disease among the beyond the level of the capacity of the health sector.
But even at this time, Doctor, as we speak, there is political tug of war. You see political parties making statements. We know that there was one time that GMO also was involved or incriminated with regard to politics. However, right now it's not about politics. It's about making sure that people have a sound healthcare system. The Colombo Defense University ICU, there's a lot of talk about the ICU being used to treat those infected by COVID-19. How do you view this, Dr. Samantha?
Like if you take in Sri Lanka, we have around nearly 600 ICU beds available, and we need to increase the capacity, no doubt about it. So therefore, we have taken so many measures to increase the number of beds so that we can provide to the patients who are critically ill. KDU is taken as one of the place because they have a good ICU. I think it's around 30 beds of ICU is available. So therefore we have requested from KDU, I think it belongs to the Defense Ministry. We have requested from them the ICU facility to use for the coronavirus patients. I hope that the dialogues are going on, the discussions are going on, how and when should it be acquired. I am sure in near future they will hand over it to the Health Ministry so that we can use it for the ICU patients, and we believe that it is the country's property, not somebody else's property.
So now it's been 3.5 months. Wuhan is going to be open for business on the 8th of April, nearly 3.5 months later. Still, Dr. Samantha, there is no antiviral vaccine against COVID-19.
Yeah.
Why is this? What is the reason behind this? We are so far ahead in technological advancement. We are so far ahead as far as healthcare systems across the globe is concerned, but we still have not been able to find an antiviral drug against this virus.
That is where the technology has failed, I think, because This is a challenge for the new technology. Virus has changed its structure. So therefore, still the scientists are facing the challenge of developing an antiviral drug or the drugs that can be used against this virus. But unfortunately, still the science cannot understand the way of this virus is acting and its structure. So therefore, we hope that it will take few more months if it's to develop something like antiviral.
When you say few more months, when will we see an end to this menace or this crisis?
That is a serious question, and it is very difficult to answer because this contagiousity of this virus is that high. It spreads like nothing, and also the effect is being prevented. Like the prevention of disease is basically based on the behavior of the people. Therefore, it is very difficult to predict the timeline that this virus will stop in this time period. Everything depends on how the general public reacts to this.
Very quickly, Dr. Anand, before I leave you tonight, you are also a member of the Presidential Task Force fighting COVID-19. The government recently announced a few days ago that, or urged those Sri Lankan passport holders living overseas to remain in those countries and do not return until they are fully recovered or there is an end to this crisis. But this seems to be somewhat of a selfish move. You saw Australia announcing their citizens to return to their nation. We saw the United States announcing their citizens to return back to their nation. And why was such a decision taken by the government?
Actually speaking, it is not a selfish decision. Actually, this is the country. This is the 14 days that we are. This is the time that we are expecting a huge number of patients, and this is the time that Sri Lanka has have to take the every measures. Have to take every measures that we can control this virus spreading. Therefore, even this was discussed in the task force. Very positively it was discussed. There is no doubt that we have to accommodate, bring them back to the country because they are our citizens. So there is a very positive dialogues are going on in the presidential task force as well. So I hope in near future with this, when we get this fully control of this disease in our country, I am sure that government will take every steps to bring our citizens back to the country.
One final question, Dr. Samantha. Right now, after this death was announced a short while ago, that was approximately at around 8:50 this evening, Sri Lankans are now worrying. They are scared. What is the message you have for them?
A very simple message. There is nothing to be worried. Stay at home, do your duty. Staying at home will prevent this disease spreading, and it will protect you and the country as well. So therefore, we humbly request everybody, please stay at home.
Thank you very much, Dr. Samantha Anand, the spokesperson of the Government Medical Officers Association, or the GMOA. He's also a member of the Presidential Task Force fighting COVID-19. We are all in the gutter, but some of us are still looking at the stars. Thank you very much. It's back to a commercial break.
Thank you very much, Shamil Rasuldeen, and thank you very much, Dr. Samantha Anand, for that insightful outlook on the coronavirus outbreak here in the country. To bring our viewers out there up to speed regarding the current situation of the COVID-19 outbreak here in Sri Lanka, and we all know that a short while ago, tonight, the first confirmed COVID-19 related death here in Sri Lanka was reported. The patient was a 60-year-old individual, a resident of Maravilla, who was being treated at the IDH. He was suffering with pre-existing conditions with regard to his kidney, and also he was suffering with non-communicable diseases such as diabetes and high blood pressure. He is the first COVID-19 related death that was reported here in Sri Lanka. Now, 6 patients who are being treated at the IDH have been transferred to the intensive care unit of the hospital. 3 of them have been put on ventilators. Now, the Institute of Infectious Diseases points out that there may be many people among the general public of Sri Lanka who have been infected by this virus, and some of them might show symptoms, some of them might not be displaying symptoms of the virus as yet. But however, they point out that the damage done by these infected patients that are among the general public of this country will be clearly seen in the coming few days. Now, the director at the Institute, Dr. Jayawardenapura, said that due to this situation, the strict regulations and monitoring should be maintained here in Sri Lanka until at least the 10th of April.
When speaking about the global outbreak of the coronavirus, the role of patient 31 in South Korea is seen as a decisive factor that aggravated the spread of the disease in that country. The number of positive infections in the country increased by over 1,000 new cases after patient 31 had participated in a mass over the course of 2 days. This patient had transmitted the disease to over 60% of the infected patients in South Korea. The fact that many similar incidents had taken place in Sri Lanka too should be taken into account. A pilot of Sri Lankan Airlines who tested positive for COVID-19 had attended an annual inter-school big match which was attended by a massive crowd. An Indian national who was affected with the virus admitted himself to an ordinary ward at the National Hospital, and a person who tested positive for the virus admitted himself to the Colombo North Teaching Hospital while concealing the true facts about his circumstances. Also similar to the mass that was held in South Korea, a foreign priest held a mass at Ariala, Jaffna. Another such incident was reported yesterday when a person who tested positive for the virus was maintaining connections with about 26 people in Atulugama, Bandaragama. The first 10 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 in Sri Lanka were all tour guides and had travelled across many districts in the country. Meanwhile, another patient who was admitted to the Institute of Infectious Diseases had previously sought treatment at the Sri Jayawardenapura Hospital and another private hospital, while concealing the fact that his family members had recently arrived in the island from overseas. Doctors state that the first patient from the central province who was diagnosed today had evaded the mandatory quarantine procedure for individuals arriving from overseas.
The COVID-19 outbreak globally has taken a massive hit on both economies, small and large. Here in Sri Lanka too, the situation is the same, with many of the people being put under lockdown and forced to work from their home. The economy of the country has been hardly hit. The central bank has set up a 50 billion rupees 6-month refinancing facility to support a wide range of fiscal and financial concessions that have concessions for COVID-19 hit businesses, and this has been offered by the government.
Among these concessions are debt moratorium for capital and interest and a working capital loan at the interest rate of 4% per annum for eligible borrowers. The government has asked banks to defer capital repayments on refinance loans granted to licensed banks. Concessions will also be given to existing performing and non-performing loans as at 25th March 2020. As part of this new program, financial institutions may grant an additional loan or a new loan facility in rupees for working capital or investment purposes subject to the following conditions, provided that the borrower submits a credible business plan. According to the circular issued, the stimulus package will be extended to businesses in the sectors such as tourism, direct and indirect export, and related logistics suppliers impacted by COVID-19. Small and medium enterprises engaged in manufacturing, services, agriculture, construction, value addition and trading with a turnover below 1 billion rupees impacted by COVID-19. Self-employed individuals or businesses who have lost their jobs or income due to COVID-19, and foreign currency earners impacted by COVID-19.
Meanwhile, the United States of America has offered Sri Lanka $1.3 million to combat the coronavirus here in Sri Lanka.
The US State Department notes that $1.3 million will help the government prepare laboratory systems, activate case finding and event-based surveillance, support technical experts for response and preparedness, risk communication, infection prevention and control and more. The State Department in a statement says the US government is leading the world's humanitarian and health assistance response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It adds that the US government is mobilizing all necessary resources to respond rapidly both at home and abroad. Accordingly, the State Department and USAID are providing an initial investment of nearly $274 million in emergency health and humanitarian assistance to help countries in need, on top of the funding that has been already provided to multilateral organizations such as the World Health Organization and UNICEF. The US State Department says over the past 20 years, US investment in Sri Lanka has included more than $26 million in health alone out of more than $1 billion in total assistance.
Meanwhile, in other local news, a group of fishermen who used illegal fishing equipment in the seas of Mulathivu were arrested by the Navy today.
13 fishermen were arrested in Mathalan, Mulathivu by the Navy along with 4,007 kilograms of fish in their possession. The fisheries officials in Mulathivu said that 2,951 kilograms of the fish in the possession of these suspects were rotten. A tense situation then arose between the fishermen and the fisheries officials. The fishermen, who were produced before the acting magistrate by the Mulathivu police, were released on a cash bail of 100,000 rupees. The magistrate, who ordered for the rotten stock of fish to be buried, ordered for the remaining stock of fish to be auctioned off.
With police curfew being implemented across the country, people getting their hands on essential goods, food items and medicine is of paramount importance. Now, the government has implemented a program. However, today, many people across the country were severely inconvenienced due to the closure of state pharmacies and various delays in issuing medicine to the general public.
The Acting Inspector General of Police had instructed the police yesterday to close down all pharmacies, supermarkets and shops except for state pharmacies until further notice. The police intervened and closed down these pharmacies as per this order. Although the general public expected that state pharmacies would remain open today, according to our correspondents, they were severely inconvenienced as certain state pharmacies had also closed down. The state pharmacy in Colombo was also shut down.
මට තියෙන දැන් මේ ෆෝන් එක. එතකොට දැන් මේකෙන් WhatsApp කරන්න බෑනේ මට. එතකොට මම කොහොමද බෙහෙත් ගන්නේ? මම දැන් මේ හොස්පිටල් එකට ගිහලා දැන් මේ එන ගමන්.
දැන් කොහොමද බෙහෙත් ගන්නේ?
බෙහෙත් ගන්න විදියක් නැහැ මාත්‍යෝ නේ. බලමු ඉතින් මොකක්ද වෙන දෙයකට මොන දෙන්නත් එක.
WhatsApp මාර්ගයෙන් ගෙන්න ගන්න පුළුවන්.
WhatsApp මාර්ගයෙන් කවුරුවක්වත් ගෙනත් දෙන්නේ නැහැ නේ මාත්‍යෝ.
හැමෝටම ඔය කියන ෆෝන් එක නැහැනේ. දැන් මේ බෙහෙත් එක 11 වෙද්දි දෙන්න ඕන.
නෑ මැඩම් මේක නම්
අනිත් එක මේ බෙහෙත් එක අරන් එන්න කියලා සල්ලි නැතුව ડોක්ටර් සල්ලි දුන්නේ රුපියල් 3000.
මේක විතර අරලා දෙන කිව්වම මේක දුවගෙන ආව මෙතනට දැන් ඇද්දි වහලා. දවස ගාන මිනිස්සු බස් ස්ටොප් කරනවා. ඒ වුණාට බෙහෙත් හම් දෙන්නේ නැහැ ඉතින්.
Tense situation arose outside the state pharmacy in Kurunagala today, with people gathering at the location to purchase medicine. The staff are not waiting in line here. We have been standing in this line for 2 to 3 hours since morning. I came here over 2 hours ago. There are people who came here at 6. Area residents complained that issuing medicine at the Mathale State Pharmacy was delayed. The patient is in the three-wheeler. It's been 3 hours and 45 minutes since we got the prescription and we haven't still got the medicine. Our correspondent in Kalutara said that the pharmacy in Kalutara was closed down today. Many people who came in search of medicine had to turn back and go home. There are only 2 state pharmacies in Kalutara and both of them are closed.
People will die if they remain without medication for diabetes like this. We came to the state pharmacy to purchase medicine, but when these pharmacies are closed, what are these patients supposed to do?
Journalists questioned Mr. Bandaragama regarding these issues when he was on an inspection tour of the Meegoda Special Economic Centre. Everyone in the world should admire the fact that when thousands of people are dying across the world, the health authorities in Sri Lanka are working hard to prevent even a single death here in Sri Lanka. We are holding discussions on a new program. According to this program, medicine will be delivered through the postal department. The mailman will deliver the medicine to your home.
At a time when the country is under police curfew, the distribution of essential food items and medicine across the country is of paramount importance. Now, we have been highlighting stories in this regard, and as we pointed out yesterday, vegetables are being sold at various prices at different locations across the country. However, at certain locations, vegetables are even being sold below the controlled price imposed by the government due to a lack of purchasers or vendors to purchase these stocks of vegetables.
Our reporters visited the Colombo Manning Market today inquiring the prevailing situation. At the location, we saw how vegetables were stocked at various places at the market. The vegetables arrived today, but we are met with a situation where we cannot sell these vegetables because the merchants have not come to the market. We are requesting to sell these vegetables for concessionary rates. We don't care if the market shuts down for even 10 days. According to them, tomatoes, cabbage, green chilies and potatoes have been stocked in this manner without being able to sell.
එවන්න කියලා කොළඹට ඒ වගේම කොළඹ ව්‍යාපාරික ජනතාවත් දැනුවත් කරලා තිබුණා කොළඹට එන්න ව්‍යාපාරකට සඳහා කියලා. නමුත් බඩු ගෙනීම සඳහා එන කිසිම කෙනෙක් දැනුවත් කරලා නැහැ මේකට බඩු ගන්න එන්න කියලා.
මේ වෙද්දි දැන් මැණික් පොළු වෙනසලේ මේ භාණ්ඩ අලෙවි වෙන්නේ රජයේ විසින් පනවා තිබෙන තොගපාල මිල යටතේද?
ඒ මිල යටතේ තමයි අලෙවි වෙන්නේ. ඊටත් වඩා අඩු මිලට තමයි දැන් අලෙවි.
As one stock of vegetables are lying around the market in this manner, more vegetables were found rotten. Either this has to be shut down or the farmers have to be asked not to send their produce. Then we don't be here. No one will be here to sell these. We had problems getting here as well due to the curfew. They point out that the government has to direct their attention towards this issue and take fair action. We are not blaming this on anyone. The government advised us not to step outside as this is a high-risk zone. But sadly, our businessmen were scared of this. As a result, only 25% of the businessmen turned up at the market. Therefore, a large number of vegetables were discarded at the market. By now, we have requested the relevant authorities to permit us to sell the vegetables at a lower price. We ask the retail sellers not to come here to buy 1 or 2 kilos. Anyone who wishes to buy above 10 kilos can come here. We ask only those people to come here.
ගන්න ඕනෙම කෙනෙකුට මේ ස්ථානට එන්න පුළුවන් එක වර්ගයකින් කිලෝ 10න් ඉහළ ඒ අය පමණක් මෙතෙන්ට පැමිණෙන්න.
ඒ කියන්නේ ඊට පස්සේ මැණික් වෙළඳසැල වහනවද?
නෑ අපි හෙට තමයි ඒ තීරණය ගන්නේ සතියකට දවස් දෙකක් හෝ තුනක් විවෘත කරලා තියන්න.
A co-cabinet spokesperson, Minister Bandaragama, engaged in an inspection tour of the Migoda Economic Centre today.
The minister toured the economic centre to inquire into the distribution mechanism of vegetables during the current situation.
The economic centres in Valisara, Narahempita, Meegoda, Ratmalana and Piliyandala are not retail markets. They are only meant for wholesale trade. If these centres continue to remain open, the vegetables that come from the villages will also not go to waste. We will keep these centres open 24 hours of the day. And the IGP agreed to provide police protection to these locations. This is a competitive market. No one can sell items for exorbitant rates. The price is determined by the supply and demand at the market. They have imposed that considering the stocks available at the Manning market. You cannot impose a control price on vegetables because there are no provisions in the law to do so. However, you can impose a maximum price. A maximum price and control price are two different things. The entire world is scared. If all the airports and ports in the world are closed down and if we cannot get those items, we have to produce our own essential goods and services.
Now, according to police, 5,386 people who violated police curfew have been arrested between the 20th of this month and this morning. 1,358 vehicles have also been impounded by police during this same time period. Now, according to the police, 201 suspects were arrested for violating police curfew again between 6 a.m. and 12 noon this morning. Within the same time period, police also seized, or rather police impounded, 65 vehicles.
18 suspects who violated police curfew were arrested when the Bandaragama police engaged in mobile patrols along roads in the area. 5 suspects were arrested by the Kotavilla police. Meanwhile, police took steps to disperse a group who had gathered close to the port road in Beruvala while curfew was in effect. Meanwhile, the Narammala police arrested a 46-year-old suspect who violated police curfew and found in his possession 25 bottles of alcohol, 506 litres of Goda and equipment used to distill alcohol. 13 people who violated police curfew were arrested by the Kurunegala police.
To discuss the current situation here in Sri Lanka, with curfew also being imposed across the country and still continuing to be in effect, we are now joined live by DIG Ajit Rohana. A very good evening, DIG, and welcome to Primetime News on TV1. DIG Ajit Rohana, now the question on everybody's minds at this time where curfew is in effect across the country is, when will this curfew be lifted? And we now direct that question to you.
Well, it depends on the behavior and conduct and the perception of general public. So if they adhere with these quarantine rules and regulations, so if we follow the quarantine rules and regulations, the health authorities, the experts in this particular area, they will recommend government to take actions or to lift the curfew. But if the people do not obey with the quarantine rules and regulations, so we cannot say the exact time. But properly, if they obey with the rules and regulations in respect of quarantine law, so definitely it will be a sometimes very short period.
Now, since the time curfew was imposed in the country, we saw very recently that the police was enforcing curfew quite leniently, if I may say so, and people were given the opportunity to go to certain markets and get their essential goods, get their medicine. But however, we have seen a change in attitude on part of the police and on part of the government when it comes to the enforcement of police curfew regulations. Why has the police and the government decided to strictly enforce curfew across the country?
As you all know, now the patients in respect of COVID-19 positive, the number has been increased. So therefore, so every time once a positive patient is detected, so our intelligence officers, the health authorities, they conduct some surveillance in respect of the area where this particular patient is found. So accordingly, we have analyzed and we have identified that there are certain groups, there are certain people, there are certain groups of relatives of the person, the patients who have been found in respect of COVID-19 positive. They should be sent on quarantine processes. So therefore, by analyzing all these things, by analyzing all these issues, the health authorities recommend to impose the curfew in a very strict way. Otherwise, we don't have any option, and possibilities to spread this disease the possibilities are very high if we are not able to take proper action.
Now, the irresponsible actions of certain people among the general public have been identified as one of the main reasons for the situation here in Sri Lanka as well as overseas for the spread of COVID-19 to aggravate among the general public. We saw patient 31 in South Korea, and in Sri Lanka too, similar instances have been identified, and we carried those reports on our news bulletins. As the DIG and as representative of the police, as part of the government, as part of the responsible authorities of the country who are trying extremely hard to curb the spread of this virus, what is your advice to people who might be tempted to act in such an irresponsible way?
Yes, as you all know, the future King of the United Kingdom, the Crown Prince Charles, and the Prime Minister of United Kingdom, they all are having COVID-19. I mean the corona positive patients. So everywhere elsewhere in the world, so there are many leaders, the public figures, queens, kings, they all are having this disease. So therefore, in our country, the problem is generally the minority patients or the suspected cases, they are reluctant to divulge their identity. So that is the main problem we have in terms of the provisions of quarantine law and the penal code of Sri Lanka. We are taking a stern actions against the persons who do not obey with quarantine rules and regulations. So if you are suspecting that you are a COVID-19 patient, or if you are suspected having that particular COVID-19 virus, so every time the relatives or that particular person, they should inform the police, and accordingly police take action along with health authorities. They should not come to the police, and we send our vehicle along with health authorities, and accordingly the health authorities will advise that particular person or the patient to what type of action that he should take.
Now, besides the COVID-19 pandemic that has affected the entire globe and the country, there is another epidemic here in this country, and that is the spread of misinformation, which is quite rampant given the current situation in the country. Now, of course, law enforcement authorities have taken certain measures to curb the spread of misinformation. What sort of action are you planning on taking against people who spread such misinformation here in Sri Lanka?
Yes, so this type of fake information that are being moved in the social media and electronic media plays a pivotal role in respect of preventing this disease. And on the other hand, some fake news, so they disturb the process. So therefore, constantly we have two centers at police headquarters, the police media division and the computer unit of criminal investigation department. We are monitoring these fake news items or the footages that are being circulated in the social media, and accordingly, so if it is against the quarantine law and if it disturbs the implementation of quarantine processes, we are conducting investigation, and already we have arrested 3 suspects, and we have taken legal action against them, and constantly we are monitoring all the social media and other electronic networks in order to trace this type of suspects.
Thank you very much, DIG Ajit Rohana, for joining us on Primetime News tonight, despite your busy schedule. We know at this trying time that you are extremely busy curbing the spread of COVID-19 here in the country. Thank you very much once again for joining us and educating our viewers out there. Now, moving on in more local news, the entire premises of the Sri Jayawardenapura Hospital was disinfected today after a person who tested positive for COVID-19 had entered the premises.
The disinfection of the hospital was carried out by officers of the Special Task Force who have been specially trained in the field. The Government Medical Officers Association had confirmed that the person who tested positive for COVID-19 at the Asiri Hospital yesterday had visited the Sri Jayawardenapura Hospital before being diagnosed.
On the 24th of this month, an 84-year-old patient had visited our hospital. He said that he was suffering from a stomachache. However, at our institution, we have a procedure where patients, despite what the patient says, are being subject to an examination where we can identify if they're suffering with any respiratory disease connected with the coronavirus. So he had to go for this examination. All the staff at the ward are using their personal protective equipment. I think that this person came here to get admitted at the hospital, but since he couldn't do it, he had left the hospital by about 5 this evening. The virus that affected this person had not affected any of our staff members. None of the other patients were also affected by this person.
The patient in question is currently being treated at the National Institute of Infectious Diseases.
Now, the number of patients who tested positive for COVID-19 here in Sri Lanka increased to 113 today with the detection of 7 new cases. The Ministry of Health said that 9 patients had been fully discharged after recovering completely from the infection. The first corona patient from the central province was diagnosed today. Now, the patient who tested positive is said to have evaded the mandatory quarantine procedure set up here in Sri Lanka for those who have landed in the island from overseas. Now, meanwhile, Director General of Health Services, Dr. Anil Jasinghe, said that all those who arrived from Chennai, India during the recent past have been immediately moved to quarantine centers. He made this statement at a daily press conference organized by the Corona Prevention Task Force today. Now, moving on from the situation here in Sri Lanka to the international arena, with more than 104,000 confirmed cases of the novel coronavirus, the United States is now the epicenter of the spread of the virus. First, it was in Wuhan, China, moved to Italy. Now, the epicenter of the virus is in the United States. 1,711 people have died, while 894 people have recovered as of today only in the United States.
New York is the worst affected state in the United States, with 7,000 new cases announced yesterday alone. There are a total of 46,262 patients thus far, and the death toll has climbed to 606. New York Governor Andrew M. Cuomo said yesterday that his state has secured about half of the 30,000 ventilators it needs. Meanwhile, Elon Musk, the owner of Tesla, has promised to provide New York with hundreds of ventilators to help meet demand from the growing coronavirus outbreak. The U.S. Navy hospital ship Mercy arrived at the port of Los Angeles to relieve local medical pressure as the number of new confirmed cases continue to surge in the metropolitan area. The ship, carrying about 1,200 Navy medical personnel and support staff, will provide 1,000 hospital beds and 8 intensive care beds as a referral hospital to treat non-COVID-19 patients. It will help relieve the strain being put on local hospitals by the COVID-19 pandemic, but will not provide any tests or treatment for COVID-19 cases. New Jersey is the state with the second highest number of cases, with 8,825 and 108 deaths thus far. California has reported 140 new cases today to bring the total to 5,019, with 8 new deaths bringing the total deaths to 110. The latest numbers come as President Trump signed a sweeping $2 trillion coronavirus spending package into law. In addition, U.S. President Donald Trump has also ordered General Motors to make ventilators for coronavirus patients by invoking the Korean War-era Defense Production Act, which allows the president to force companies to make products for national defense. U.S. President Donald Trump said the United States would produce 100,000 ventilators in 100 days.
Now, as of 5 p.m. today, there were 613,882 confirmed COVID-19 cases, with 28,231 confirmed deaths in 202 countries across the world.
Italy, meanwhile, announced 919 new deaths from coronavirus, the highest number of fatalities any country has reported in the space of 24 hours since the outbreak began late last year. The total number of people who have died as a result of COVID-19 in Italy now stands at 9,134. The number of cases also continues to rise, hitting more than 86,000. Fernando Simon, the head of Spain's Health Emergency Coordination Center, has confirmed that almost 10,000 workers in health services sector have been infected with COVID-19 during the ongoing pandemic, which has claimed almost 5,000 lives in Spain. Spain recorded 832 new deaths in a day, increasing the death toll to 5,690. In the United Kingdom, there are more than 14,500 confirmed cases and at least 759 people have died. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has himself tested positive for the virus. Most of the cases in the UK are in England, primarily in London. Germans have been largely complying with rules to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. Chancellor Angela Merkel said today as confirmed cases in the country continue to rise, and her chief of staff said the shutdown would not be eased before April 20th. The number of confirmed cases of coronavirus in Germany has risen to 53,340 and the death toll in Germany is nearly 400. India has announced a $22 billion bailout for the country's poor to help counter the economic effects of the COVID-19 outbreak. India has 775 active COVID-19 cases, 84 recovered cases and 20 deaths. Russia is beginning what Vladimir Putin called a non-working week to try to slow the spread of the coronavirus. The government is urging people to stay at home, though mixed messaging has left many Russians confused. The number of Russians infected with COVID-19 passed 1,000, while more than 228 new cases reported today. Total death reported from the country is at 4. The city in China where the coronavirus pandemic began, Wuhan, has partially reopened after more than 2 months of isolation. Crowds of passengers were pictured arriving at Wuhan train station today. 3 deaths were reported, but numbers have fallen dramatically according to China's figures. The state reported 54 new cases today, emerging the previous day, which it said were all imported.
Now, the second day of the procedure to release employees of investment zones and send them home began today.
After being subject to medical tests, the employees of the Bandaragama investment zone were sent to their houses. More than 2,800 registered employees were transported through buses. According to our correspondent, the buses went through a sterilization process.
In order to send them to police stations, we subject them to mandatory medical tests. Measures have been taken to self-quarantine people after sending them to the police station. We have informed all the police stations. We have also informed the relevant health sector officials. These preventive measures will take place according to that.
He also expressed views regarding the employees that were not registered.
There are no actions taken regarding the employees that are not registered because we gave 2 days for that. We will take future measures after having discussions with the management and the workers.
The employees arriving from Bandaragama were directed to the Hatton police this evening. Our correspondent reported that the employees who arrived at Balangoda faced difficulties due to the lack of transport services.
And now you're up to date regarding the latest of news surrounding the coronavirus outbreak here in Sri Lanka and the world. Now remember, if you want to receive accurate and confirmed information regarding the outbreak of this virus, you can of course log on to the Newsfirst maintained site dedicated to keep you informed regarding the COVID-19 outbreak here in Sri Lanka and across the world. The site to visit is www.coronavirus.lk. Once again, www.coronavirus.lk is the site that you have to visit to be up to date on the latest news surrounding the COVID-19 outbreak. Now, moving on to some other news, the United Nations High Commission for Human Rights has expressed his displeasure over the presidential pardon granted to former Army Staff Sergeant Sunil Ratnayake.
Spokesperson for the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Rupert Colville, said, quote, "We are troubled by reports that the convicted perpetrator of the Mirisuville massacre in Sri Lanka has received a presidential pardon and was released from jail this week," unquote. The release noted former Army Sergeant Sunil Ratnayake was sentenced in 2015 for the murder of 8 civilians in the year 2000, including a 5-year-old child, after more than a decade-long trial. 5 defendants were brought to trial, but only Sergeant Ratnayake was convicted. The conviction was confirmed by the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka in May 2019. The spokesperson for the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights said this was one of the rare human rights cases from the decades-long conflict that had ever reached a conviction. The release adds, "The presidential pardon is an affront to victims and yet another example of the failure of Sri Lanka to fulfill its international human rights obligations to provide meaningful accountability for war crimes, crimes against humanity, and other gross violations of human rights. Victims of such violations and crimes have the right to a remedy. This includes equal and effective access to justice and reparation, and that perpetrators serve a punishment that is proportionate to the seriousness of their conduct." Spokesperson for the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights notes that pardoning one of the sole convicted perpetrators of atrocities committed during the Sri Lankan conflict further undermines the limited progress the country has made towards ending impunity for mass human rights abuses.
Now, before we end our news bulletin for tonight, the art competition organized by Gammadda Nagitemu Sri Lanka is currently receiving submissions. Now, these drawings done by people from across the country depict their vision for the future of Sri Lanka. We leave you tonight with footage of these drawings. Until we meet next time, take care and God bless.
පට අතරින් හිනැහි නැකිටෙමු ශ්‍රී ලංකා පියසැක සංකා බාධක අතරින් නැකිටෙමු ශ්‍රී ලංකා හිතමු ඉදිරියම එකවන්ව හැම නැකිටෙමු ශ්‍රී ලංකා හෙට ඉදිවන නවලෝක හමුවේ නැකිටෙමු ශ්‍රී ලංකා නැකිටෙමු ශ්‍රී ලංකා පියසැක සංකා